Hey, welcome to Guitar Knobs, the guitars, gear, noise, and nonsense podcast, hosted today by these knobs.
Tony Dudzik, Pick Guardian.
Hey, everybody, it's me, Todd Novak. Welcome to the Guitar Knobs podcast. Our good friend Jared is somewhere. He's in the Appalachian Mountains, isn't he? He's on a porch looking out some mountains.
He's out
on vacation.
On a porch looking at some mountains.
Yeah.
He better be careful up there. He'll get shot. Somebody would think he's Bigfoot.
That's, yes.
Yeah.
You're not wrong.
Packing or
Well,
wearing a vest.
Just looking for a place
back-
to go to the bathroom in the woods, and this guy shot me in my hiney.
His back is not that hairy.
Yeah, the crap out of someone. They're just the sheer size.
Yeah. So anyways, and then we've got our good pal, Rob here.
Hello.
Rob Chafe, master amp wizard. It's going to be a fun one today because we are doing Ask Rob Anything. We're going to get your answers to the questions that many of you have
No
submitted.
questions from Tony.
This is going to be awesome.
It is. And you know why? Because
No.
this guy knows his stuff.
He does. We're not gonna. It's not gonna be like. Do we need to fact check that? I mean,
I would.
you've built your brand.
Okay, I'll correct that. He doesn't actually do any of the work. It's the 50 laborers that he has that live at his house that
Yes.
do all the work.
Little
Yes.
minions.
Yes, the minions.
I wish.
Understood.
No. He's good at what he does.
He really is. Hey, before we go much further, we got a message from our friend Trevor Gunberg.
Oh,
Yes, he's the one who essentially sent. He gave us the last "Would you rather," if you remember.
I do remember that.
He said, "Hey, I was so excited. I got my Would You Rather read. For the record, if I did a Todd and didn't choose one of the three options, I'd go with the Mockingbird. Other than that, Todd was correct. I'd pick the Warlock."
Nice.
So, he likes the Warlock. So
Okay.
thanks, Trevor, for clarifying that for us. We were all
Yeah, it's nice to hear from
wondering what was going on.
Because we had a guess at what your response was going to be,
We did.
but apparently we guessed right.
We did. All right. Well, we've got a really, really big shoe.
Big shoe.
So we're not going to waste too much more time.
Okay, Todd.
We don't have a 4 on the floor.
Are you saying you don't want me to say things anymore?
I do want you to say something.
Something.
In regards to the Positive Grid Spark amp.
Oh,
On this particular episode.
What are we gonna talk about?
We're going
What
to
are we
cover
gonna talk about?
the
Come on.
Smart Jam.
Oh,
Now,
yes.
Before I go any further,
Smart Jam.
this is the Spark amp by Positive Grid, and this is a wonderful piece of equipment. We're going to be giving one of these away. You can
What?
sign up for a chance to win a Spark amp at positivegrid.com/guitar knobs. You can win one.
Back up a second. You're telling me that we're going to have one of these to give away.
Yes. That's actually happening.
Wow.
All right. So we've been covering some of the major features on the Spark amp, or the Spark amp. This one it has so many, we had to break them out.
Yeah.
This is about the Smart Jam. Now, this is one of those things that if somebody tells you, "Oh, this has got a Smart Jam," you're like, "What the heck is a Smart Jam?" Mm-hmm. It is pretty remarkable. The Spark amp and the app, the accompanying app,
I love
which
the
is
app.
super powerful, work together to learn your style and feel, and then basically then it generates realistic bass and drums to accompany you.
Yeah.
Impossible? No. All you got to do is play your riff.
Yep.
And kind of like Shazam, it listens to the Shazam app where you're like, "What's that song?" And it tells you what that song is.
Right.
And it's probably "Drain Me" by the Valentinos.
Probably not.
Shameless plug. No. What it does, it listens to your riff,
Yep.
and then it circles around and it says, "Give me a minute, I'm going to figure this out." And then it sets you up with the beat. You choose your drummer, and then you set your BPM, then you play your riff.
Yeah.
And then it says, "Here you go," and you can jam to it. That is remarkable.
Did I mention I tried that feature when I was testing out the amp?
Tell us about that really quick.
I mean, it was just cool. I played a simple 3-chord kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found was that, I mean, not that I was doing anything super complicated, but it gave you some opportunities to explore on
Yeah.
the guitar whether it be a lead, whether it be some other rhythm things. It's just a very cool feature.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of hard to beat that, especially for under $300. You can buy this amp, and there's lots of deals out there, at different retailers too. So,
and in this day and age where everyone's afraid to be in the same room with a lot of other people,
it's great for practicing. It's great for figuring out, like, hey, I just even practicing by yourself without a beat or trying to go into GarageBand or something and sorting out a beat. Man, that's a pain. This makes it really easy. So, do yourself a favor. Go over to Spark Amp, and you can find that at positivegrid.com/the guitar knobs. You can buy one of them for your own right now.
Do it.
Or you can sign up to win a free one. Or both.
Do both. Have two.
And give Rob the other one.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks very much to Spark Amp from Positive Grid for hooking us up with this delightful piece of equipment and for providing one to our listeners. Ladies and gentlemen, that is it for as an announcement. So I do want to do a quick, hey, what's going on in our music worlds this week? Because that's always important, and it is beloved by our even more beloved audience. So, Tanya, go ahead.
So this week, and what's really funny is this kind of ties in with the Spark Amp too, because one of my neighbors, we were out walking dogs and got to talking, and I told him what I do. And he was really interested. And he said, well, I used to play a little bit of guitar. He says, but I've got a buddy of mine who's a really good guitar player. And he used to have a music showcase here in it started in Central Ohio. But he said, would it be cool if we came down one day? So I said, yeah, come on down, check it out. And we got to talking, and his friend Jeff, really nice guy, and he was playing. It was really funny. He said, we got talking about amps and guitars and all this stuff, and he had in his collection of some pretty stellar amplifiers. He said, but I have to admit something. I said, what's that? He says, well, I bought one of these Spark amps, and I haven't touched anything since.
What are the odds of that?
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not plugging anything. This actually happened. And so we got to talking a little bit about that because I had already tried it out, and he has posted some videos on Instagram and some other things of him. One of the other features that we didn't talk about is you can use like a play along feature. So if you want to,
you can choose, like, they got a load of different things.
And if you want to play, he showed me one of his Led Zeppelin play-alongs, and it was really good. And it knows, it automatically sets the amp to the settings that are closest to what maybe Pagey used. The sound was very good. It sounded, like Page's guitar. And he made a couple of flubs, but overall not too bad. Probably better than I could do.
Yeah.
But it's just really cool and
I can
coincidental.
verify that.
Yeah, well, you got these meat hooks. But yeah, it's just really cool, and it's fun to see other people exploring that world and having Spark or Positive Grid help sponsor this and enable one of our users to win one.
Very cool indeed.
So that was just a little notation for this week.
I like it. Rob?
Cool. Work stuff. Today, this is a good one. Today I was battling. I should have turned this one away, but he's a really good customer, and so I want to help him out. He had his buddy convert a old Bell PA system, which is, not much of a PA system. It's like bass, treble, and like 3 mic inputs or something like that. Anyways, he had his buddy convert it to a guitar amplifier.
These are typically, like, whenever you're converting some, it's like an old 40s, 50s, maybe even 60s PA
60s.
system.
Yeah, this is probably 60s PA system. 2 606s, 12 AX7 inputs, 12 something else on one of the other channels. Anyways, but yeah, so yeah, converting it, which is nothing more than changing the mic inputs to guitar inputs usually and doing a couple little things. Anyways, his buddy did the work. It hummed and had ground problems, and so went in there, corrected the AC main supply, and now I'm going through trying to figure out the ground scheme on this. This thing just hums at 120 hertz like you would not believe. All the volumes down, just all the time. It's the ground scheme.
Yeah.
And actually, I can't figure out where it's grounded at. like literally, I can't figure out where all the circuits.
Is it not grounded?
It is grounded. I measure from the chassis to this isn't all grounded at 1 point or 2 points. This is I don't know how to describe it. It goes from one component to another component to another component. Like all the grounds are tied together from wires, so they're not going to a point.
No central point.
Exactly. But somewhere it is connected to ground.
So
I've traced all the wires, and none of them are. There's nothing soldered to the chassis at any point.
Could it just be the pots that are
No.
touching the metal? No,
Because the ground that goes to the pots for the outside lug that grounds the pots.
Yeah.
That is running to the other components. They're not grounded against the back of the pot at any point.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I'm like, and I the input jacks that the guy put on there were grounded. The sleeve was grounded to the chassis, so I lifted those because I figured, okay, there's 2 ground points going on.
Right.
There's this and that, and that's where the ground loops come from. So I isolated all of those. The circuit's still grounded, and I traced every damn wire, and there's no point anything soldered to the chassis or crimped to the chassis touching. So somewhere I'm missing it, or I have seen this a couple of times. There's a slight chance the center tap of the power transformer is grounded to the casing. There's a slight chance, which I've seen that a couple of times,
Yeah.
and if that happens, that'll cause all kind of ground loop problems.
Yeah, I can see where that would be an issue.
I was going to say it was probably going to be that.
But
Whatever. That's what Todd said.
what a nightmare! Like I said, I should have just turned this one away because I'm only going to
It's either
charge
that
him
or
for
the
a couple
kickstand.
hours. Yeah. Good guess, Todd. I'm only going to charge this guy for a couple hours, but I've got so much time into it. It's just, I spent a good 4 hours today just staring at it and chasing my tail. So,
Nice.
so it's a good one, yeah. So I'll be making minimum
Post
wage
that
on this
video
one.
on Instagram.
Oh, yeah.
You staring at it and
12
chasing
hour.
your tail.
Wow. Outstanding.
How about you, Todd?
Well, let me tell you, people, I had something, I think as guitar players, enthusiasts, whatever you want to call us, we love our music.
How about guitar nerds?
Guitar nerds, I'm sure they love their music too. They've got a lot of great music over there in the UK. Hello, guitar nerds, fans, we are of you. I received in the mail something that is real special to me.
It's a certificate.
It is a certificate. It is not a certificate. What it is,
It's a picture.
I think one of the greatest songs that are maybe in my purview, in my
Don't
world.
build it up too high.
In my world.
I'm guessing Champagne Supernova.
Yeah, it's got to be Oasis, right?
No,
I mean,
it
No?
isn't.
What is it?
Read it, Tony. So I hold here a handwritten
Handwritten
lyric framed on an image of a blood red moon.
Ah.
Go ahead and read it.
Fate up against your will through the
Kind of pitchy, dog.
thick and thin. He will wait until you give yourself to him.
Yeah. So
he actually
lyrics
wrote
from
this?
The Killing Moon by
Yeah.
from Ian McCullough by the Echo and the Bunnymen.
That is
And
super
he-
cool.
Yeah, they did a real limited run of that, and I said I absolutely
Yeah,
want that.
Oh, so this isn't this. He didn't actually do this.
No, he
one.
did that.
He
They're all hand done.
really.
Yeah. How cool is that? And it's just, I mean, maybe somebody doesn't think it's cool, but I think it's cool.
I think it's
that's
pretty
special
cool.
to me because I think that's such an extraordinary song, and lyrics. The lyrics are important. Rob doesn't know what we're talking about, but that's
I have
okay.
no idea.
That's okay.
That
looks
is that-
nice. It looks nicely done.
I can't
It's a
think
neat
of any
little
Molly
frame.
Hatchet lyrics to give you, so we'll just keep
Flirting
going.
with disaster. Come on.
Anyways, yeah. So and all I did was sometimes I get the tickle. I'm like, I wonder what my with this band that I love is up to.
So how did you stumble on that?
That's exactly what I did. I'm like, I'm just going to see what they're up to. Checked out the socials, and it says, hey, I'm going to do a select number of signed this thing, and I was like, bang, I hit that thing.
Yeah, there's Nick Cave was doing some things like that. He like hand types stuff on an old typewriter
Yeah.
and pastes it on
Yeah.
things, and You can. I mean,
I love it. It's a personal connection to something that's important to me and my.
Why doesn't it say to Todd?
I don't know. There's nowhere to fit it.
Oh, he could have signed it in the
They
dark
could've.
part.
silver
They could've.
Sharpie. Yeah.
Anyways,
Yeah.
so that was my thing.
I can do that for you,
now,
Todd.
let's move on, ladies and gentlemen. This has been quite enough shenanigans.
That was a great podcast.
It really was.
Yeah. See you next week, guys.
Just wait. It's going to get even worse. This is going to be so exciting because
Why?
we've got great questions. We've asked our audience, hello
Yes.
audience out there, to each and every one of you who are driving. We
And we got a great
truly
response.
appreciate you.
Got
we
a
did.
really
We got
great
some
response.
Excellent questions. Now, Rob, in his, I don't want to call you anal.
Yeah, anal retentive.
Oh no, I am.
Yeah,
I'm a
you're the
nutbag.
OCD.
Yeah.
You know, I
own
think
it.
we
I'm
all
well
a little
aware.
bit. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, what's that?
Persnickety.
Persnickety. Persnickety Rob has we submitted the question. He's like, no, I'm going to organize them, which I do appreciate because if you're tracking along, you're like, didn't they just talk about that?
Yeah.
So you filtered that.
And I
However,
wanted to get
you
as much
did
done.
give a category that we're going to read anyways. Okay, number one. This is a category of tube replacement biasing, and just a quick. Give everybody, maybe people aren't familiar with you. Give us a 30-second, who are you, what do you do, Rob?
I work on tube amps. My name
Exclusively
is Rob.
tube amps?
Nope. Anything electronic musical instrument gear. So
Okay.
keyboards, PA equipment,
Right.
guitar amps, anything.
And
tube-
Rob, how have you made your name out there, I guess you might say?
I guess. I mean, I guess.
Aside from being really, 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 really good at what you do.
Well, I if anything, it's going to be that I'm a musician. I'm a player.
Yes.
So
I'm a player.
I've got a little different skill set than most techs. In that,
It's not just about the electronics.
yeah.
He has an extra finger on each hand.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and like with tube amps, is that, a lot of customers call me and go, yeah, this thing doesn't quite sound right. In fact, I just had a guy this past week drop off a 71 Marshall, and he's trying to give me all
Pounds.
this description. Yeah, 71 pounds. He's trying to give me all this description, like, it sounds like this and like this. And I finally just cut him off. I was like, as soon as I hit one chord on, I'll know what's wrong
Yeah.
with it, because I've had enough of these.
Yes.
I know exactly.
And you are quite a very accomplished musician.
Oh, no. I'm a mediocre musician.
No, you can play the guitar pretty mean, my friend.
Thank you. But yeah. So anyways, that's
Yeah.
what I do, and that's it.
Well, and if you can follow him on at Mad Cow Amplification
Yep.
on Instagram. And really that's where part of your other name has been made, because you really, it's not that you're being mean or malicious or anything, but you do call out things that if you see something wrong, you're working on an amp, you're like, this is the wrong way to do it.
Yeah.
There are right ways and wrong ways to do electricity.
Yeah.
It's not a subjective thing. It's not like, I don't like this color or this doesn't sound cool.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm not in there, and if I don't particularly like the sound of an amp, like there's lots of times I'll go, hey, this amp made really well. It doesn't really do it for me, but it's built well. It's going to be reliable. It's worth the investment. Yada yada.
It's built safely.
Safely, exactly. Yeah. Usually stuff like you said, I quote call out on there. And
Yeah.
it's just stuff that crosses the bench, and it's just things that I think are interesting that I open up and go, geez, why did they do this rather than this? Or
Right.
they should have done this. It would have saved the customer, $100.
On that note, I do think one of the things that I really appreciate, and you don't outright call it out, but things like, well, this is the third Hot Rod DeVille I've had on my bench this week.
Yeah.
That's a note. Like, it's difficult for the average person to drop $1,000 on an amp just because you think it's cool or you heard somebody else likes it. And if you're playing along and then you're just like, well, what's wrong with this? Isn't this a reputable? I paid all this money for it, and now I got this thing that I don't know how to fix. It's going to cost me money to fix.
And quickly inject here, we'll get back to this, but the Hot Rod series, I think, are amazing amps for the money.
Yes.
The reason that I see so many of those things, and we'll get into this in more detail,
Yes.
is that there is a gajillion out there.
Yeah.
So just by sheer number, but
Right.
continue.
Okay.
Todd.
So that's a good point. Yeah. But nevertheless, you
Yeah.
are inadvertently helping new buyers go, I don't, maybe that's what I don't want.
And I've got, I would say at least 2 or 3, 4 or 5 customers a week will reach out to me. And they're customers I've dealt with for a while. And they'll say, hey, you fix this and this and this for me. I'm looking at this amp. What do you think of it? And I can give them the inside scoop and say, hey, I've seen a lot of those.
Right. And you don't go, I hate this amp. It sucks. It's not cool.
No.
You say,
and that's just it.
This suffers from it. It's just like if you're buying a car. It's not very different.
Yeah. And I'm not one of these guys. A lot of musicians are like, Marshall is the greatest amp ever. Fender's the greatest amp ever. That's crap. If you've got that kind of attitude, that's like saying that, BMW is the only quality car made. No, it's not.
the only good color.
Yeah. Just because you prefer that's cool.
Yeah.
But, so that's where
we all have our musical preferences.
Exactly.
We have ears in between our brains.
Yeah, and it's whatever you're doing to try to get your sound. But yeah, so anyway, I've got a lot of customers that'll reach out to me and just say, hey, I'm looking at the new XYZ.
Yeah.
What should I look out for? And I can tell them, hey.
I did that when I purchased my Supro.
Oh, okay.
I remember I said, hey, do you see many of these? And you said, nope. And I'm like, he goes, I guess that's a good thing. I'm like, perfect. Thanks.
Yeah. Yep, there you go.
Anyhow, you're not the Better Business Bureau and you're not Consumer Reports, but you
tells it
do
like
have the
it is.
information. Yes.
Yep.
All right. All that is to say, we've got questions for you, Rob.
Okay, let's get started.
And Tony's going to help provide color.
Unless
you want to swing around over here and
I don't want to get that close to you.
Okay. All right. Number 1, this is from John Esterly.
John Esterly.
Yes. Familiar name. Tube replacement. This is about tube replacement and or biasing. What do I need to worry about if I want to change tubes from a safety standpoint?
Can we actually put all 3 of these together, read all 3 questions? Because it's all the same answer.
Okay. Ed Hauser Black said, tube replacement, biasing. Please explain biasing. Ed Hauser Black.
And the last one from David.
David Kaminga. When does an amp need bias adjustment? Mesa Boogie says, if you replace the tubes in your amp with their branded tubes, you don't need to bias the amp, and or you can't bias the amp. Is that because they only use tubes with certain values? What about all of my other amps? When I replace tubes, do they need to bias adjustment?
Okay. All right. So we can see why all 3 of those are lumped together. They all ask one big question.
Biasing.
Exactly. Biasing. So when we
Especially
change
from Ed
tubes,
Hauser Black.
Yeah, exactly. Please explain biasing. Okay, so here we go. So like John asked, what do we need to worry about when we change tubes? When you change preamp tubes, you don't need to worry about anything. Pull them out, swap them around, just, you don't have to do anything. There's no biasing that needs to be done. Those, a lot of people often incorrectly describe it as self-biasing. It's not. It's a negatively biased grid in relationship to the cathode. There's a resistor that sets the bias point.
Are you going to explain biasing? Because I'm already lost.
Yes. Well, we're going to do a simpler version of it.
Okay, let's do that.
Biasing in general, let's keep it to the simplest type of tube, like let's say a preamp tube, okay?
Sure.
Preamp tube has a plate, a grid, and a cathode. Those are the 3 components that...
Like a light bulb. You got the 2 prongs and a spring.
No.
Well, I'm just... No.
By like a light bulb, he meant nothing like a light bulb.
Stop.
Yeah.
What I mean is...
Both have electricity applied to them,
What
yes.
you're doing is you're explaining the components within the tube.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay.
Sheesh. I could have said
He's reaching for
the
that
bun,
one, but
the
we'll give it to
hamburger,
him,
the
Tony.
lettuce, and
Just give it to
tomatoes.
him,
I could have said that.
So yeah, there are 3 components inside the tube.
Like a light bulb.
And this is going to be really, really generic in scope here. The cathode is typically wired with a very low potential relative to ground.
What's the cathode?
One of the 3 components.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What does it do? It's just part of a
We
component.
don't have enough time.
Okay, that's okay. Hey, that's okay. If something is too big, if it's easy, I'm
it's
gonna
too
set them
big-
up. You can
yeah.
knock them down, or
Too big
or
for this.
Bypass it.
So again, 3 components: plate, grid, cathode. Cathode is typically wired very close to a ground potential. The grid is where the signal comes in, the low-level signal, like a guitar signal right out of your guitar, into the grid of a tube. The plate is where the high voltage is applied and where the louder signal comes out.
Okay.
Okay, those are your three parts of the tube. When you put in a preamp tube, where I say it doesn't need to be biased, is it's actually biased by the resistor it's wired to the cathode. It's a very small resistor. That's the cathode I said is going to be wired very close to ground potential, very little voltage there. So they'll have like a 820 ohm or 1.5K, 2.2K resistor, very small resistor. So it lifts the cathode from ground up 2 or 3 volts. 2 or 3 volts, literally nothing, maybe a volt and a half. Where the plate has 200 to 300 volts applied to it. And I guess maybe 160 to 260 or 270 volts applied to it. So yeah, so that's why you can replace any preamp with any other preamp. It's that little resistor that actually sets the bias value of a preamp tube. And if the reactance and impedance, everything of one tube versus another transconductance changes, that will just give you a little more gain, a little different EQ, but there's no danger. You can swap in tubes and just listen to it and go, oh, I like that better or worse. Okay, let me grab this other tube, swap this one in. Okay. Where you need to worry about bias is in output tubes. And in particular, if it's a class AB, class AB, fixed negative bias supply. I don't know.
When are you going to get to the simple stuff?
Yeah, well, this.
I feel like Homer Simpson when they do the cross section of his brain, and it's like him eating a sprinkled donut inside his brain. That's what's happening right now. So let me.
You made the mistake of asking about the components of a tube.
I want. So biasing is a word that gets just thrown around.
Yes.
What is in layman terms? What does biasing do? Is it like shifting more to the right or to the left? What is that doing?
It's controlling the voltage.
Thank you, Tony.
No.
By
Screw
controlling
you, Tony.
the voltage, I meant not controlling the voltage.
Who are you, me?
Here, the most dumbed down version of it is it's like setting the idle on your car.
The who?
The idle.
Setting the idle on your car. So is it idling at a higher RPM or a lower RPM?
Depends on where you set the.
That's a biasing.
Yes. So the
Got it, everybody?
So the bias doesn't actually adjust any voltage in the tube at all.
No.
The bias is, and again, this is only with one type of output section because there are several different output designs where this does not hold true. But typically when people say that I have to have my amp biased, they mean that they have to have a negative voltage that's in a bias supply adjusted so the new tubes run at their optimal point.
Okay.
And that holds true primarily for class AB push-pull amps.
It's kind of like a carburetor.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's
you
can
can thank your Uncle Todd for helping everybody out right there.
Yeah. The bigger way that I explain it is that if you replace the engine in your car, you rebuild the engine in your car.
Yes.
You wouldn't just leave the idle set where it was last time. You have to adjust it.
I mean, who would do that?
I don't know, but
Not
people do
me.
it all the time.
Tony might.
So that's
okay. So that's very helpful. That is very helpful. Finally, oh my God! I can't believe I made it through that.
You made the mistake of asking me the components of a tube.
To go to the bathroom.
Yeah, filter out that component stuff.
So why did I think that it had something to do with the voltage, the plate voltage?
It does. Okay, so and this is where it gets very tricky. What you're adjusting is a negative bias voltage.
Negative bias voltage.
Yeah, it does. And that, so you're not adjusting the plate voltage, you're not adjusting any of the components, just the negative voltage that's going into the grid of the tube.
Okay.
And the more negative it is the more it'll block the flow of electrons, the currents. And that's where you said, it controls the voltage. No, it actually controls the current through the tubes.
Current, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The flow of electrons.
That's what I meant.
I don't know who invited the Peanuts parents, but Glad we're back. So,
Okay, so let's actually answer this question here.
Yes.
So John's question was, do I need to worry if I want to change tubes? Again, preamp tubes, no. You can swap those in because of how they're biased. Don't need to do anything. In some amps, you can also swap out the output tubes without needing to, quote, adjust the bias.
Okay.
I can't, there's too many different amps. You can't
Sure.
say this one. So yeah, you might be able to look it up online and see, even on the manufacturer specs, they might say that it's cathode biased.
is biasing something that the average Todd should do? Or, I mean, it really shouldn't
I am
be
of the
playing with that.
opinion no.
Tony's saying no.
And I'm of the opinion no also because there's no black magic to it, and it's really not difficult, and it's not rocket science. But generally,
So it's simple, like all that other stuff you were saying?
well, you can do it without understanding any of that stuff. But the problem is that a good percentage of the time, somebody might slip with a lead of their meter. Or accidentally clip something in the wrong place.
There's a lot that can go wrong.
There's a lot that can go
Yeah.
wrong.
And
You
it's worth like giving it to somebody else and going and watching The Simpsons.
Well, yeah, and this is like we talked about a couple episodes ago about buying tubes. And I say, man, just find somebody, a tech that you trust, and just get the tubes from them. The point is that they're going to sell you the tube the same rate that you can get it for online.
Yes.
If you have a problem, they'll stand behind it. You don't have to ship the tubes off somewhere. Like with me, if you would bring in your amp, say, hey, Rob, it's been 5 years I've been using it out on the road, and it sounds fine, but I just want to put in some new tubes for peace of mind. I've got new tubes and a fresh start on it. Okay, no problem. That's a minimum bench fee. And you get the tubes the same cost you get them everywhere else. I give you a 90-day warranty. If in 89 days your amp blows up and it's an output tube, I'll replace the output tube, fix the problem, and all that for a minimum bench fee. And obviously when I put in the tubes, I'll give your amp a good clean bill of health, make sure there's no other problems, and adjust the bias.
And a hot oil massage.
There you go. That's
All right.
So
So another part of that question was, I believe it was like if Mesa Boogie said that you can, if you're using their tubes and the same tube, same value,
yes,
Same car, same tire.
that you
great
don't,
movie.
or you don't.
The two Utes.
The two youths.
The two what? Utes.
The two what?
Did you say Ute?
Back to Tony.
So I think that's kind of not so great advice from Mesa Boogie. I mean, I think that yes, you can. I mean, if your amp has 6L6s in it right now, and you get a different 6L6, chances are it will be close enough to work. But okay, let's
It's all a gamble.
Yeah.
It's all a gamble. You might, and
There are
sometimes
variances, Tony.
Minute
as they may be, no tube is exactly the same, Tony.
This is true, and that's the
except apparently for
What's
Mesa
it like
Boogie
sitting in
too.
my seat today?
No. so yeah, and this is Groove Tube. I think was doing this way before. In fact, I know they were doing it before Boogie. They used to have the numbering system,
Numbers,
right?
yeah.
And way back in the day, I was a huge proponent of Groove Tube when Aspen still owned the company. Todd, you got a question?
Aspen. Okay.
So anybody not familiar, Groove Tube, when you buy their output tubes in match duets or quads, they number them 1 to 10.
That's
And-
2 and 4 if you're not French.
Okay. and they and basically if you were to have your tubes replaced in your amp and you use number 4, let's say, the next time that you replace the tubes, in theory, you buy a set that's numbered 4 and you can put them in and the bias adjustment is not necessary.
Right.
In general, with the way Groove Tube used to do things, that was pretty accurate. Because they would test them to such a high degree in the 10 numbering system. The tolerance that within that number 4 was plus or minus such a small percentile, it wouldn't be exactly where it was before, but we're talking within, 4 or 5% at the most.
Right.
So it's plenty close enough, right?
Like the elastic on the various pairs of your underwear, Tony.
They're pretty stretched out.
You guys. So, me and Mesa Boogie are, how can I put this? We agree to disagree. And we're still friends. I still work on their amps and stuff. But
You're a licensed person.
It's an interesting relationship. You will not find me on their website.
No.
So that's all I'm going to say about that. But
yes.
but here
But you're
is
the licensed
here is part of the reason. Mesa Boogie amps are not self-biasing. When you purchase their tubes, and they say, actually, let me point this out. For their warranty, they in their literature, when you get their amp, it specifies if you don't use Mesa Boogie tubes, your warranty will be void.
Ooh.
So they require you use their tubes, and they say that it's because they test them and they're perfectly matched for their amps and all this stuff. That is all doo-doo.
I love that word.
It none of it is. What they do is on almost all of their amps are biased extremely cold, which means that the tubes are running at a very low percentage of their maximum output. And what this allows them to do is that they could put in a very hot set of tubes and it still won't be over a safe operating threshold. So the downside is, and I have this all the time, I'll have a customer bring me especially like a dual rec, and they'll say, yeah, man, my buddy's sounds just much more dynamic, much more alive. I'm like, yeah, yours needs biased. It's biased really cold, and basically the tubes, output tubes are close to being in cutoff where they're almost turned all the way off. And I'll check out
That's
the amp.
no
I'll be
good.
like, yeah, everything's good. I adjust the bias, give it back to them. People go, holy crap, it's a different amp. And I'm like, yeah, because it was operating at 20% idle plate dissipation. We warmed it up to 55. And yeah, the amp comes alive.
Yeah.
So, but that's Mesa Boogie, why they say that you can put in.
Okay.
And they're right. You can put in almost any tube into a Mesa Boogie.
It's running lower octane.
It's just, well, the idle, it's barely not stalling out is
Yes.
basically where they set them from the factory.
yeah, back
so if
to
you
the
put in a
idle.
higher
Okay.
octane,
Yeah, I tried.
then it just goes up to like, oh, okay, it's actually idling at 1,000 RPM. Great.
Yeah.
Like where it should be. So that's the thing with Mesa Boogie.
Okay.
You had another question on
Yes. This is from Bob Monkhouse. This is tubes. Is rolling tubes still a thing?
Yeah, I kind of mentioned this. Tube rolling is when guys. I've never been this guy, but guys will buy like a half dozen tubes or something and just swap them out of
Like different kinds of brands and all that stuff.
And it's preamp tubes, and it's typically the V1 position because that does affect the gain structure of the amp the most. So guys, yeah, we'll they'll buy a whatever amp and it has a Sovtech in the first stage, and they'll put in a tongue sole, and then they'll put in this, they'll put in this, they'll put in this. So, and like we talked about before, the preamp tube, you can do that without any need of biasing. And
Yes.
I don't know if it's still a thing. I don't hear about it as much anymore, but I know there's still guys out there that.
Does it, in your opinion, do you find that that has produced drastic results enough to roll your tubes?
If it makes you happy, go ahead.
Okay, that's a totally fair.
You're not going to hurt
yeah.
anything. Will you notice a difference? Depends on what two tubes you're comparing, or three, or whatever. Some tubes there'll be almost no difference. Other ones there'll be a very noticeable difference.
Okay, so it's not
gonna
like going from like, I'm going to change my Bumblebee to an orange drop capacitor.
Yeah, well, you're also
which
asking the
is-
wrong guy on that,
Okay.
because I think if I would build 6 amps with 6 different caps and tell you, or how about this? I built 6 amps, tell you the 6 different caps. You couldn't tell.
That's
you
my
know what
point.
I mean? Yeah,
Yes. Okay.
yeah. So, and that's the thing. And preamp tubes definitely make a difference, because I have my preference. I like this one for this type of amp because of these characteristics. But in a pinch, could you use something else? Yeah, it's minute differences,
Right.
very minor differences.
Okay,
so
that's good. Whoo, boy.
Yep.
Tubes, baby. Hey, speaking of tubes,
Nice segue.
you like
yeah,
that?
where are we going from there?
This is, it says, you gave it a heading of HR series.
Yeah, these were all
Tubes.
from one guy, and they all related
D.
to his
He's
amp.
one of our guys.
Mike D.
Apparently, he has a Hot Rod Series amp, because I think all of his questions were
Okay.
related to that.
So here we go. The tube shortage. I recall you mentioning there is a possible shoe shortage.
shoot
Tube shortage.
my tortage.
Yeah. Tube shortage due to production issues. Is there any particular brand of 6L6 and EL34 that you recommend in general?
Yeah, let me update on the tube shortage thing. I finally got my long-awaited back order from New Sensor, which is great because they were able to fill everything. So
Oh, nice.
This would be probably, I don't know, 18 or so different types of tubes, meaning like a Tungsol 606, a Gold Lion this, blah, blah, blah. They were able to fulfill all of them. So I don't know if that just means that I got lucky and I got what was coming in the last time, or if the, quote, shortage is just a little dip in production, we're back to normal. Only time will tell. So
Right.
Now, you're asking about a particular brand of 606 or EL34. Just like we were talking about, a minute ago, there's lots of good options. And I won't say that this is the only 606, it's the only EL34. Again, like we talked about a little bit ago, anybody that says, Marshall's only good amp, Fender's the only good amp is an idiot. It depends on what you're looking for.
Yes.
I keep several options.
That's French for
606s.
opinionated, by the way, but go ahead.
Okay. I keep several options for 606 or EL34s in stock at any time because some in my opinion, lend themselves better to different circuits.
Okay.
But yeah, let's say I'm going to say there's a dozen, it's probably more than a dozen, probably close to 2 dozen different EL34s currently being produced.
Okay.
I keep 3 in stock.
Wow.
JJ, the JJ EL34, not the E34L, not the EL34-2, but the EL34, the Tungsol EL34, and the TAD EL34, let me get this right, B-STR. TAD EL34 B-STR, which is actually, I think it's out of production right now. But so those are 3 EL34s I keep, and it depends on what you want to use them for.
Right.
606, Tungsol, EL34, GC-STR.
This is a 6L6 here on.
606, yep. So Tungsol 606 GC-STR, TAD 606. I don't know if there's an extension on that, or there might be STR on the end of that one too. And then the JJ 606 GC. Those are the 3 that I keep.
So same brand.
Yeah, now you think about
both of those.
it is the same brand. Yeah, how about that? Yeah.
I mean, you really didn't have to think about that hard. It's just 3.
But I'm also I got in my head, like if you'd ask me that for 6 or 6, they vary. So I do have to.
Yeah.
Smart ass.
What do you like on EL84s?
EL84. See, perfect. Tungsol. That is my go-to. I keep JJ in stock as well, only because I have to. There are some amps out there, like the old Marshall DSL 401s. In their infinite wisdom, the holes through the chassis for the tube is so tight you can't fit a Tungsol EL84 in there.
Really?
The tolerance is that tight. The only current production EL84 that'll fit through there is the JJ.
Huh.
So kudos to Marshall on that one. Good job, guys. So literally that's why I keep some JJs in stock and there's some other brands that have done the same thing where it's like, first time I went to retube one with Tungsol, it's like slam. It won't go into the chassis.
Wow.
Yeah.
Who would have thunk? All right. Thanks, Mike D. Here's another one. It is well known that Fender Hot Rod series amps have problems with their filter capacitors or filter caps on the street. I have a 1996 model that probably needs new ones. When the time comes, what brand of filter caps would you recommend?
Who asked that question?
Mike D.
Yeah. So filter caps, you're absolutely right. That is, almost every Hot Rod series amp out there has filter cap issues, except the very early ones, which his is. If you have a made in USA Hot Rod series, being the Hot Rod Deluxe, DeVille, or the Blues Junior, if it says made in USA on the back of it, you have the IC caps, Illinois capacitance, capacitance caps. Yeah, I think their name was actually Illinois capacitance, when they were still made in the US. And even though it's well past the 20-year point, which is the general threshold people consider safe for filter caps, I still open up many old 96, 97 USA made Hot Rod series amps. Filter caps are in perfect condition.
Interesting.
They haven't failed yet. The more recent ones, starting in the early 2000s, where IC moved over to China production maybe, Indonesia, somewhere overseas, or bought out.
Fiji.
Those caps suck to the point that I have replaced some under warranty that were new store stock.
Oh,
wow.
The
Yikes.
units hadn't even left the store yet, and the caps had failed.
That's not good.
Not good at all. So he's absolutely right.
Hey, speaking of
when
filter
it's
caps,
time.
can you explain just really quick? Elevator. What's a filter cap?
Okay, filter cap is actually not a thing. A filter cap describes the use of a capacitor. Its placement in the circuit and what it's used for. So if you go in a store and say, I want to purchase a filter cap, the guy would just start laughing at you because there is no such thing as a filter cap. It is typically electrolytic capacitor. It doesn't have to be. Oops. Typically electrolytic capacitor that is placed in the high tension or high voltage section of an amp to filter out the residual AC noise.
Aha!
So that's where the name filter
So
cap.
if your filter caps are going bad, your amp is going to be noisy.
Noisy in some way. You're going to either have 120 hertz hum on it, or sometimes if you play on an amp and you've got these weird ghost notes happening, that's filter caps. Or sometimes you have oscillation where you hit a note and then the amp just kind of takes off with some weird something. Or sometimes on a motorboat you hear like a sound. Keep it clean, Todd.
I didn't do anything. Right?
Keep it. See, this is why we need a video camera.
Tony just about lost his.
So on that same note,
Should we answer the exact question Mike asked, though?
Yeah, answer the question.
When it's time to replace your caps in the Hot Rod series, at least right now, my brand to go to and has been for about a decade is F and T.
F and T.
And T.
Okay.
F and T.
F ampersand T.
T.
Okay.
That's it. Yep. Those are my go-to caps.
Great.
Right
Last one from Mike D.
Well, wait a minute. I wanted to do a follow-up on that. So how many times can you safely touch the leads of a filter cap?
Well, as many as after the first one, then you you can just keep right on going. I mean, the first one's the one that hurts after that. and that's the other thing, people, and we've talked about that on here before, people, if your amp's not plugged in and you go poke inside the amp, it'll hurt, but it's not going to kill you, I mean, as long as the amp's unplugged,
Yeah.
I mean, you'll feel it and probably won't poke your finger inside the amp again after that. But I get hit at least a few times a year, and it's not the end of the world,
Yeah.
So
That explains a lot.
yeah, how about that?
All right.
All right. Did that answer all of Mike's questions?
No, here we go.
Okay.
Tongue saw tubes seem to be a good fit so far in my hot rod, but I'm curious to know what you would suggest.
Tongue saw are great.
You kind of already did.
Well, and this goes back to why I keep different tubes. It's for different uses. Tongue saw are great in a hot rod series. One downside about tongue saws in a hot rod is that a lot of people on the Hot Rod Series Deluxe DeVilles, they don't use the gain channel. They use it as a clean pedal platform. Tongue saw is great for that. It gives you that very chimey Fender high end and a little more of a round bottom. But on the gain side, the tongue saw, because the gain side on those amps are so noisy and so ice picky, and they've got a lot of upper mids that's very nasally sounding. The tongue saw is a high amplitude, high gain tube. And it's not great for that setting. So the point of all this is that I usually qualify this. If someone says I've got a Hot Rod Deluxe DeVille, I want it retubed, I go, do you use the clean channel only as a pedal platform, or do you use both channels? If they use it as clean pedal platform, tongue saw. If they use both channels, JJ.
Okay. That solves everything.
Did you black out right there for
I
a minute?
kind of did for a second. There's a lot of information.
I think he just touched a filter cap.
Yeah.
No, we would have heard like a whoa.
All right. This one, this is a late phone in. This is from Blair Toast. In a peanut butter jelly sandwich, peanut butter on both sides or just one side of the bread?
One side, but it's so thick it doesn't matter. It's really like the bread is there just to hold the peanut butter together.
Okay. Well,
A follow up to that.
yes.
Butter side up or butter side down on toast?
Huh?
I don't understand the
I
question.
don't understand that either.
Do you butter the top side or the bottom side
Why
of
would
the toast.
you
Well,
mean
it
you would
just-
you would
it just
eat with the
depends
bottom
on-
dripping?
Yes,
Oh,
That's
okay,
ridiculous.
okay.
Who does that?
Russians.
Russians do that?
Why would
Yes.
you want it dripping down?
Why don't that doesn't make
Because
any
they
sense at all?
they get the maximum taste of the butter.
That's ridiculous.
Look it up.
They need to. Well, they're
Dr.
clearly not
Dr.
using
Seuss.
enough butter.
Dr. Seuss wrote a
I was about to
story
make
about
a
it.
joke like this is why they don't have like a company like Apple or anything. But then again, these are the same people that we made the pen they'll write in space and they just use a pencil. So
Yes.
yeah. So I mean that's logic. But no, up. I don't always butter side up because
Butter side up.
I don't like to wear my food. But
Yeah.
should try it
That's
sometime.
yeah. Well, I'm now. You know what's funny? But I'll text you tomorrow and let you know how it goes.
I want photos.
I don't know about that, Tony. That's a little personal.
okay. So let's keep this moving. Enough of this nonsense.
Yeah,
of
way to go,
yours.
Todd. Nice one.
Yeah, you
Can't
sidetracked with that
Rob,
one,
I can't
buddy.
take you anywhere. All right. So this is from. Where did we go here? Yes, this is issues/red flags. Okay, the first one is from Carl Spackler. This is, I'm a newer player, but my dad gifted me this old Fender Reverb. What are the most common issues I should look out for as I continue to play it?
That's a great question. Unfortunately, I don't have a great answer. And the reason being is that with anything of vintage, there are just too many potential issues. You can reference podcast number. Anybody know which one it was when we talked about if you're buying a vintage amp, what to look out for?
Yeah. That was number 173.
Okay. So yeah, go back through the catalog and find that one.
Somewhere around
Because
there.
we basically spent an hour and a half talking about what to look for in each, different circuit. But the problem with vintage amps is that they've hardly ever been, haven't been serviced at all, or have only been serviced by a very skilled, qualified technician. Most of the time, it's a mixture of decent service, excellent service, and then absolute hacks. So the amp is a grab bag of stuff.
Okay.
So unfortunately, really, if you want to continue using that amp, Carl, I would, again, find a local tech you like and trust. He'll charge you a minimum bench fee to tell you exactly the status of your amp, what should be addressed, what is great, what is original, what isn't. And then you know what you're looking at long term. And there's a chance that he'll give it back to you and go, yeah, pay me $50. Everything's perfect in this amp. Don't need to do anything. So,
Okay. All right. That's a great explanation. Rob, thank you so much for doing that
Thank you,
for
Todd.
us. Let's see here. The next one is from Nathan Savage. What are the warning signs to not buying an amp from a vintage, new, and or original perspective?
Okay. Again, vintage, it's almost impossible to really, tell you because especially a vintage amp, it's going to show signs of use. I mean, I guess there's obvious things like if you plug it in and it has some weird hums, some weird clicks, pops, assume that you're going to be into it for some money. I mean, I guess that's kind of common sense. But there's nothing that you can look at and go, well, if this does this, there's just too many options out there. New, from a vintage, new, and original perspective. I'm not sure what he meant by new and original perspective.
Well, I guess maybe not modified
Okay.
or just, out of the store.
Well, I mean,
Okay.
and that's case in point is that if
Well,
an amp-
actually, so vintage being like super old, new being like, hey, this is a couple years old.
Something more
and
current.
or original might be like right out of the store, maybe.
Okay.
I guess. Something like that.
well, we'll go with that then. So yeah, with vintage, and actually in new, honestly, look up reviews because if there's a known problem in an amp, you'll be able to type in, whatever Joe's, Marshall clone amp, whatever, and you'll see other reviews come up where guys go, man, this thing blew up on me 2 days in this, and so you can use your community on that. But I'm a big proponent. Buy from a store that'll give you some form of a warranty, even if it's only 30, 60 days on it. And then again, if you're saving money, you're buying used, or it's this really hard to find vintage amp, you get a great deal on it. Again, I sound like a broken record. Take it to a tech you trust. And I've got customers that do this, and they'll buy something from a store and they bring it to me. And I'd say 1 out of 4, we find a pretty serious problem, and he either returns it or the store makes it right for him. You know?
Well, so I think as a follow to that, two good caveats. One, if you're buying a vintage amp, know going into it that you're probably going to put some extra money into.
Even if you buy it from a
something.
guy who says everything's just been done.
Yeah, it's going to need
So if
looked
it's a
at some
$600
point.
amp, it's an $800 amp.
Easily. And secondly, if the price is so
Yes.
good, there's probably a reason for it.
Yes, absolutely.
So either way, be prepared to spend a little extra dough.
Absolutely. A great deal. Yeah, and I get that all the time. People go, well, I got a great deal on it. Well, it's like, well, you're putting $600 into it. I don't think it was that great of a deal now,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Indeed.
Good advice, Todd.
All right. The last one, this is from Charles Bonus. This is Issues, boutique builds. I like oddball amps. I own several old amps and a couple of new smaller builder amps. I've heard reference to amp safety on the show. As a player, what does that mean to me? What should I be concerned about?
Yeah. Did we already talk about this, or was we just talking? Okay.
No?
I think we were just talking. Well, I think when you're talking about your Bell and Howell experience.
Oh,
yeah.
There you go. Yeah, okay. It seemed like deja vu here. Yeah, he's right. I've mentioned this quite a bit. There are certain things when you build an amplifier that need to be done a certain way for the unit to be safely used by a consumer. This typically applies to how the AC voltage is delivered into the unit. How is it shielded, grounded, isolated, so that if something goes wrong, the IEC connector on the back breaks off, there's not a chance of the chassis becoming hot and shocking you, which we talked about before. You could touch an amp that's not plugged in and you'll get a little zap, but no big deal. But if something breaks on the back of your amp, the chassis goes hot, it's still
You step
plugged
on
into the
cord,
wall.
something wiggles.
Yeah,
jiggles.
and it's still plugged into the wall. So every time you touch the chassis, chassis is hot. That could kill you. Yeah, cause a fire in your house, cause serious damage.
Okay.
So that's usually what I talk about. Now, as far as how does an end user identify this, you can't. You can't. But I tell you one thing, if the amp says CE certified on the back of it for export,
Yeah.
it is safe.
Okay, so this is something that we've talked about offline a couple times. Like, and you mentioned that CE certification is really, really expensive, and that's why
It is.
That's why kind of only the big dogs are doing it, right?
Yeah.
But you also mentioned something very interesting, which is you don't have to
Doesn't
get
have
the
to.
certification to use the same code
Exactly.
to do this, to build the same way for safety.
Exactly. Just if it has this,
You're literally paying for the certificate.
exactly.
Okay.
You're paying. So if it has a sticker on it, that means that not only does it follow all those very tight criteria demanded by the EU,
Which is
European Union. Yeah. Yeah, so it not only follows all that, but yeah, like you said, it's also certified, which has to be for export, right?
Right.
But like you said, anybody can do these things, so it meets
Just
those
following a recipe.
requirements. Yeah, I mean, and it's actually very simple things. And that's the biggest problem I find, as he's talking about. I like oddball amps, I think he said.
Yeah.
In the small builders or something like that.
I don't know what he meant by oddball. I don't know literally if that's like weird ones or just maybe lesser known.
Yeah,
or something
exactly.
Like that.
What he's probably talking. Yeah, oddball amps that aren't mainstream, probably, and
Yes.
quirky. Like, oh, hey, I took a Champ and I put EL84s in it and put an extra gain stage. Well, that's an oddball amp. But yeah,
or some of the ones where they're doing like clones,
clones?
but they're folling old circuit.
don't
Actually,
I,
you just did a post on that, didn't you?
I would say, don't I have one of those right now?
Yeah.
That I was, they all blur together, Todd. But yeah,
Sure.
I think I actually have one right now that I'm correcting issues where somebody. That's right. Yeah. It was it's a builder in I want to say New Jersey New Jersey, Maryland, I don't know, somewhere on the East Coast, where it's basically a Fender amp, and he's made a few changes to the preamp, added a little switch here, a little switch there, and this circuit should have had 6v6s. He's put in 606s into it. So he tweaked a couple little things, but basically it is a Fender, whatever clone,
Right.
And he copied and pasted all of the design choices that Fender made in the 50s and the 60s. And back then, the amps weren't...
There wasn't CE
Yeah, well, yeah, that's just... Yeah. I mean, at this time, there were still ungrounded AC mains, Yeah.
All that is, I don't want to fail mentioning that, part of the excitement of being a guitar enthusiast is there are so many choices, and there's always new awesome builders and weird amps being made and stuff like that, and it's really exciting. And you were talking about pulling back, going back to some of those early circuits. So we got to remember, those are 50 to 70 years old now.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, and what we're talking about with the his question about safety, we've learned a lot over the years. Like we talked about back in the 50s and 60s, the amps weren't even grounded. Now everything has to be grounded, and there's other improvements have been made that some amp manufacturers have updated, and other ones are keeping them very traditional to the old 50s and 60s circuits. Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, as an end user, though, there's almost no way for you to be aware of this looking from the outside. Mm-hmm. So,
Actually, you could even, if there's pictures, a lot of these guys are taking pictures of the actual, their wiring, and everybody's proud of the guts and stuff, and they share it on Instagram. You can probably see a couple of major offenses if and so you can say, hey, I'm looking at this amp, send it to your amp tech and say, hey, what do you think?
Yep.
Because it's an investment, and it's if it sounds great and you love it and it's going to be worth it, hopefully it's a safe one.
Right. Yep.
On the same note, in a lot of cases, reissue amps, if they're reissued from a 50s amp or something, 50s would be point-to-point wiring. Usually the reissues now are circuit board. What is your take on point-to-point versus circuit board?
Good question, Tony. I do not believe that one form of construction versus another is always better, is always worse. It goes back to how it's laid out, the components that are used, the quality of the build overall. Meaning that you could have, and I see this all the time, it's in a small, they're typically the DIY clones somebody will bring in, and the components are good, and it's all point-to-point wiring, but it was done by a drunk monkey.
Okay.
And so this is why I see them, is that people will buy them online because it's a Plexi clone and they bought it for $500 DIY. And it is good components. Got the Sozo caps, got all this, and the guys are excited about it. And they get it home and they plug it in. It's not working. It's making all these noises, and they bring it to me. I'm like, oh God. And this happens literally half the time on DIY amps. People bring me. So again, somebody else already built them. They're buying them secondhand DIY. I open up. I have to call the customer and go, hey, we have to gut it. There is it's so. Every inch of it is such a disaster as far as build quality. But then on the flip side, you could have a very high quality PCB made clone that's made by whatever company, and they're using worse quality components, but it's going to be a better product because it's made to more exacting standards.
No globs of solder.
Yeah. So in my opinion, and again, people go, it's got to be point to point. It has to be turret. It has to be this. That's all crap. It's a combination of everything,
Good to know. Thanks, Rob.
Yeah.
All right. So this is, we're going to hit solid state versus tubes. The great debate. Hey, this is from Bob Grout. This is, why do people seem to prefer tube amps over solid state, scientifically speaking? Now, remember, this isn't they're good or they're bad. It's
and for the record, there are some fantastic sounding solid state amps out there. There really are. I mean, iconic jazz choruses.
The Randall line.
Roland.
Randall.
Oh.
Do you not remember Randall amps?
No, I
Yeah,
remember,
right.
but I'm
We're
searching
talking
my
about
brain. I'm
Roland.
like, there is no legendary Randall solid state amp I can think of.
I thought that's what Dimebag played.
Anyways.
I don't know if this is tube or
Tony.
not, but even if they were, they're anyways.
Yeah, I used to have a big giant Randall head.
I know you did. Oh yeah, Todd was another one.
Oof. That's yeah.
It was a
Whereas
little rough.
again, the Roland Jazz
But I also didn't know what I was
yeah.
doing. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to use the
Yeah,
thing.
that's fine. And,
So anyways.
and, you know, yeah. Anyways, so what was our question? So, okay, scientifically speaking, why do some people prefer tube amps and solid state? If you, okay, I'm trying to think of how to put this. I wouldn't alienate.
Is this going to go to perfect sound versus?
No, it's
Nope.
not. It's not perfect sound.
Okay.
And there's a thing. And for some things, you might prefer a solid state amp. You might prefer that Randall amp that you winced at. If you want this certain broken,
Yeah.
you know, it's all about tones and palettes, right?
Yes.
Generally, I think the people that prefer tube amps. Okay, how about this? I'll speak for myself. The reason I prefer tube amps is that they are more three-dimensional. They're more responsive to your playing. They're more responsive to the pedals. They're more responsive to pick attack. And there's more complexity to the signal. And that's talking about scientifically speaking. There is literally more overtones and more detail to the sound if you would analyze the actual signal that comes out of a tube amp versus a solid state amp. That's why I personally prefer tube amps. But again, if I wanted a certain sound, I might plug into a jazz, chorus or a Randall, whatever, to get a different tone that doesn't have that or a different character.
Right.
Yeah.
So let me put a different spin on that, if you
Spin
don't
away,
mind.
Todd.
Okay, let's say you had a like a nice like a PVVTX, something like that.
I thought you said nice.
Hey, take it easy. So no, but you have something with a lot of quote unquote headroom. Okay. That is basically a clean sound.
Okay.
Just a kind of a pure signal, right? That up against the pure signal of like a Princeton that's got some juice to it. It's two completely different worlds.
It's two complete, and this why, and when I say things like characteristic and overtones and everything, I'm not talking about gain and how it breaks up. I'm talking about just a clean signal.
Okay.
It's going to have more of these overtones.
A clean signal with now, if you are somebody who is like, I got to have 4 overdrives and I'm stacking them and I'm running, a fuzz at the end or doing all kinds of crazy stuff. That doing that through an amp that you spent a lot of money on character with versus something that's super clean with a lot of headroom on it. That's an interesting debate.
Well, and
it's all to your ears. It's not good or bad. It's just an interesting discussion.
Exactly. And somebody will want all that into a very sterile, clean solid state amp because that's the final piece in their puzzle. And the other guy wants a fuzz that's, a clipping dead battery kind of thing into a broken up Marshall because that's the sound, So there's no right or wrong answer. There's no right or wrong, but again, back to his question, asking why some people prefer tube over solid state. I'm guessing it's because of those characteristics that are inherent to a tube that solid state just physically can't
it's a
reproduce.
certain je ne sais quoi.
Yeah, it's the
I would say-
inconsistencies of it,
Yeah. Inconsistency and, dare I say, defect.
Asymmetry.
Absolutely.
I mean,
absolutely.
A tube amplifier is not a perfect amplifier.
No. And that's what makes them so glorious is that they're you're absolutely right, Tony. It's all the shortcomings that make the tube amps so great. Yeah, inconsistent. Yeah.
Interesting. So it really it depends completely on your ears.
What you're going for.
And I think if you like the sound that's coming out of pedals, I mean, you could go into a power amp, just like
and some guys do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's more and more guys, especially, and I will say this, and I don't think anybody's going to get upset with me saying this. The heavier sound you go after, meaning like if you're going after like the Slipknot, Lamb of God kind of sound, that kind of stuff, it matters less and less.
Right, because you're not hearing from amp characteristics.
That may torque some people
Well,
off.
no, I mean, but when what we're talking about is we're talking about subtleties.
Yeah,
You're
the
overriding subtleties with
there you go.
that much distortion, that much volume,
and
that much.
they are doing. You hit on. It's so much gain. It is compressed to such a point and gained to such a point that the subtleties are then just.
I'm not saying they're
squished.
not there at all,
Right.
or I'm not
Right, because as soon as
diminishing
you say
your
that,
choice of amp.
all the guys are using dual Rex or 5150s
Or,
just
you know.
went, whoa, Todd, whoa,
Well, yeah,
whoa,
I mean,
whoa."
there's a whole range of them out there, and I'm not at all passing judgment on anything
you
like
were.
that.
Yeah, you were.
I'm not.
Yeah, you were.
But there's a difference between the guy who is playing a single note, but just wanting to hear the sweet bend, like John Mayer versus, pick anybody who's playing anything super heavy.
Right. Yeah.
That's a big difference in tonal
Absolutely.
expectation.
Yep. Right.
Anyways, okay.
So how do we
and
get
that's
way
all
off on that
subjective.
one?
So we got all subjective.
Yep.
We were trying not to get subjective. All right. We are on to Jonathan Jerusik. There are so many great sounding amps that are not tube based. Orange Crush, Quilter, Helix Headrush, Neural DSP, Fractal, Kemper, etc.
Positive grid.
Positive grid. With there only being 2 factories in the world making tubes, where do you see guitar amps going in the next 5 to 10 years? Will we be completely solid state? Will digital rule supreme? And there was a similar question to that by where'd it go? Hang on. What is the amp of the future? And that was from Goldman Guitars. Okay. And that kind of leads into it a little bit. I mean, obviously, you're not a soothsayer and you don't know
Right.
say that 10 times fast.
I will say this, though, and Tony will most likely remember this. Late 80s into early mid-90s, tubes were looking very dim. Mm-hmm. There were very few amps. Like all the manufacturers switched to solid state almost exclusively, like Fender. I don't even know if they were making anything with tubes until, what's his name?
Bill Schultz.
No, I was going to say the guy that did the Viber King.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, not Zinke. Anyways, but there was a good amount of time that they were producing almost no tube amps, no production reissues, none of that kind of stuff.
Right.
And at the same time, tube production was at an all-time low. This is before Matthews had
That's
really...
where Fender was making like the red knob chorus kind of stuff.
Exactly. And those were... That was their main offering,
I had one of those.
Yeah. And my point there is that production at that time was scary. Mm-hmm. Like the Czech factory had closed down for the first time. Nobody had reopened it. Mike Matthews was just getting a foothold over in Russia, starting to buy up other brands and start to, So we've already kind of gone through that. And I honestly, compared to now, that was a much darker time. That was very serious. Like, wow, our tube's going to go away. I don't believe tubes are going to go away. I think there's always going to be a factory or two in these almost third world countries that'll keep producing tubes in some form. And it'll be good enough for us to get by. It's going to be similar to what it is now.
Paul Rivera.
There you go. Rivera. Yeah. Yeah. When he came back, that was the beginning of tubes back at Fender again. But, so I don't see tubes going away, but I'll say this. I still, this is me being an anal nutbag. Kemper, Helix, Fractal
I don't know what to do with that.
are great products. It's okay, I'm aware of it. All those companies are great products, and they've come so far from the kidney bean pod of 20 years ago. It's not even funny. But I can, and I've done this. I have done this myself. I have modeled a deluxe, 2 Bogners, a this into my Kemper. I've done this with a Helix and all this stuff. Dial in a sound. I go, wow, that's pretty good. Okay, that's pretty close to a Shiva XC or a Bogner XC or a Boogie Dual Rec. Okay, cool. And then I turn around and plug into one. I go, oh, no, it's not. It is what it is. There's so much, back to the characteristic, and there's so much nuance with the tube amps that it's gotten way better. They're capturing and sampling more and more detail, but it's still not there.
But isn't part of that the feeling of an amp, the SPLs?
Yes.
I mean, it's just like a Fender.
You have to move the speaker. You have to move
sound
the
pressure
speaker.
levels. And that, to me, when you're plugging into an amp, whether it be a twin which is super clean, but you can feel it buckle your knees.
Yeah.
Or any of these others.
Well, and if you're playing a twin on, let's say, 3 or so, part of that is, and a lot of guys usually do this with gain amps, that they find themselves having to turn up the gain more and more, versus if the amp was just a little louder. My whole point of twin, if your amp is loud and even clean, when you hit a certain note, it's going to sustain.
Right.
Because it's the feedback of loud volume coming from the amp through your speakers, the pickups picking that up, and the amp and the guitars working together.
Baby.
Yeah. So and when you plug into a Helix and go in direct and have in-ear monitors, all that's gone.
Yeah.
So it just is what it is. And some of my friends are hardcore Helix users and Fractal and Kemper users.
And they're going direct in the house kind of thing.
Exactly. Direct. Yeah. They walk in, and I envy them in some degree, because they walk in with a guitar in their back and this tiny little 10-pound quote pedal board that has a controller in it.
Yeah.
They set up in 2 minutes. There's no hassle.
And they don't have to worry about, is my stuff going to work? For the most, I mean,
because when one of these do fail, it's game the frick over.
Yeah.
It's like your Windows 95 system just locked it. You're screwed.
Blue screen.
Blue screen. Gig over. But my point on this is that some of my friends are like, "Oh, you just hate all that stuff. You're a snob about this." Hey, man, I understand the preference and the place for it. For me to enjoy playing, I enjoy that give and take between the instrument, the tube, the speakers, that circle.
And some people don't have that luxury. If you live in an apartment or a condo or a townhome
Well, how about you're a working musician that's doing fly gigs?
Yeah.
You can't be lugging your half stack, and it's better to have a Kemper than to have faith that when you show up, the back line is going to be something you can use.
Yeah.
Or you do casino
any number
gigs.
Of those things.
Or you do a bunch of wedding gigs. You can't do that.
Right.
So they have their place. Just
right. Or if you're doing 4 hours of covers at like a great paying gig at a bar, it's like you have to run through a lot of variances in your sound.
I did that Saturday.
Yeah.
So 4 hours
with the tube amp, 4 hours. Yeah, three 1 hours. Yeah, that can be done absolutely. But so anyway, so I don't see them going away. I think that the modeling stuff and the solid state, the digital stuff is going to get better and better. And you know what? In 20 years, we have this conversation. We might go, you know what? It's damn close enough.
Yeah.
We're now at 99.9%.
Yeah.
Well, by that time you'll have your space station.
Right. I'll be doing
business.
tubes in space. Right.
Perfect.
Yeah. I'll be retired.
All right. Let's keep this moving. DIY service. So this is from Steve Keys. Where would one go to learn about amp repair if one is interested?
I have no idea.
Yes, you do.
No, I unfortunately, because here's the thing. There's if you want to go learn how to build guitars, there's schools for that.
Yeah.
You want to learn to be a recording engineer, there's schools for that. You want to learn to be a amp tech, or even just a musical instrument electronic repair tech in general, work on keyboards, whatever. There are no schools. I'm not aware of a single school that specializes in this.
Interesting.
And furthermore, when I got my degree, there were tech programs
in electronics.
My degree is it's a Bachelor of Arts Science with a focus on small electronic circuit, small electronic circuits, I think it was called. But the point being, it was based on small circuits still. Mm-hmm. Most colleges don't offer that anymore because there are designers that design the small circuits, but for the most part, there's no tech jobs, there's no bachelor's degree programs that necessary for that anymore. So yeah.
Didn't I just see though in the last couple issues of Vintage Guitar, I think Gerald Weber is doing a video course for amp repair.
I trust you on that. There are some guys that have done amp classes and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know of any comprehensive program that will get you from I don't know. I'm 19. I graduated high school. I want to do this. I don't know anything.
Right.
How can I open up a shop in 2 years? I
Yeah.
don't know of any programs that can
you're
get
right.
you there.
Not like a Roberta Venn kind
Exactly.
of thing.
That's what I mean. For everything else, there might only be a few, but there's some sort of specialized trade schools.
Right.
6-month program, 1-year program to get you well on your way.
Right.
So it's rough. I mean, I am a firm believer, though, that if you really want to do it well, you unfortunately need the higher education. You need some sort of degree in electrical engineering. I really do believe that, because the people that, I'm not going to say all.
Or certification. You don't have to get a bachelor's. You can get like a trade school kind of thing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It'll be some, but that's the point though. Is unfortunately there aren't even associate's degrees
That will take you
available
from
usually.
painting by numbers to understanding what the circuits are doing.
Yes, exactly. Very good, Todd. And I have some close friends that don't have that, never did the formal education. I'm not saying it's impossible. It's a whole lot harder to teach yourself physics than it is to sit in a classroom and learn from somebody that has 40 years experience.
Okay, good one. Good question, Steve. All right, here's a kind of a follow-up to that. This is from Trevor Gunberg. What are 2 to 3 YouTube amp guys that you mentioned that are worth watching and or following?
Okay. Uncle Doug is not bad. He's pretty popular out there.
Uncle Doug.
I think it's Uncle Doug or Uncle Doug's.
Okay.
Something. Yeah. I'm sorry, I don't have the website saved on me.
Quite all right.
But yeah, he's fairly popular. He's got quite a few followers out there. He's really good. Yeah, he's really good. My favorite guy, Psionic Audio, is I think how you say it. It's PSIONIC Audio, and the guy's name is Lyle. He is my favorite guy. Because his attention to detail is very good, and he is very knowledgeable and has decades of experience, and it shows. Just how matter of fact he can examine a circuit, and his depth of knowledge. Yeah.
Okay. Good. All right. Steve Keys also says, when bleeding capacitors prior to working on them, how does one determine the resistor value to fabricate a bleeder circuit? Do I need to go get something to eat while you do this?
No, this is going to be really simple.
Simple like the first thing?
Simple like, well, don't ask questions like, well, Rob, what is the construction of a resistor? Don't ask these kinds of questions and we'll keep on track.
What is the hypotenuse of an isosceles triangle?
Exactly. Yeah, we'll just stick with the question here. How does one determine the resistor value? It honestly doesn't really matter. You could use almost any value resistor. It will bleed the circuit. I use a 10K 25 watt. The reason I use a 10K 25 watt is that as far as resistance goes, 10K is somewhere in the middle. It's not too low. It's not too high. So the lower the resistance you go, the more current, the more quickly it's going to discharge stuff, but it's going to have a lot of current so that resistors can get hot very quickly. I mean, you might get a little spark too when you apply it. 10K isn't too low. But if you go too high, you'll be sitting there you can make some coffee, go take the dogs for a walk, and it's still bleeding if you put a 1 meg resistor on it. So 10K is a nice middle ground, 25 watts, so that way it can take 500 volts. Like at 10K, if you apply 500 volts to it, you forget to unplug your amp and you tack it in to bleed the circuit, it's still plugged in. It's not going to blow the resistor. It can take that.
Okay.
So 10K, 25 watt.
All right. Good. All right. This one is from Danny Bear with a choice of Marshall, Fender, or Vox. Would you choose jalapeno cheddar, Flamin' Hot, or limon spice Cheetos?
And why?
What were the options
Jalapeno
again?
cheddar, Flamin' Hot, or limon?
Okay, I got to go with the jalapeno.
Okay.
And I'll qualify this by I have not eaten a Cheeto in 30 years.
Well, they are
You
the
were missing
cheese
out,
that
brother.
goes crunch.
Yes.
There is no cheese in there. I don't know what chemical they're putting in there to make it. It is not cheese-based product.
Yeah.
Well,
be
you
sure
will
of that.
find in 20 years from now, it's how you repair tubes in outer space.
Yes.
Well, yeah, 'cause that's the only thing that'll survive.
Yeah. All right, we're going on to miscellaneous stuff here. This is from Arnold Babar. Arnold Babar.
Babar? Wait a minute. Is that like a cartoon Babar?
kind
There
of.
was a children's book.
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's not the same.
Are you sure? Might be the same guy.
This is pedal platform amp. I love pedals, and in the pedal world, there's lots of talk about headroom. Explain that a little bit. I think we kind of talked a little bit about that, but we can touch on it. And how is this best for pedals? Is it best for pedals? Does this mean the sound of my amp is producing will not be as good with an amp that breaks up earlier?
Preference, right? Preference. Do I want to put in that tube screamer into a amp that has more headroom and is more neutral? So I'm just hearing the pedal itself, or do I want that pedal to accentuate a sound I'm already getting with my amp?
Okay,
Preference.
so the headroom, for those who don't know, the headroom is basically eliminating any distortions or overdrive tones that are coming from the amp.
Yeah. The term headroom a lot of time is probably misused more often than Tony's shaking his head. Yes. It's kind of a catch-all term. Headroom alone means like what you described, Todd, where it'll get louder and it will not reach the saturation point.
Right.
But typically people equate headroom with also an amp that is very, what I say neutral, is if you plug into a Vox AC15, you're going to know you're plugged into a Vox AC15 right away because it is doing lots of things to the tonality of your guitar, right?
Sure.
Whereas if you plug into a, I'm trying to think of something right off the top of my head. Okay, let's say a Bassman. That's way more neutral sounding. It's not chopping off as much lows, and it's not accentuating this highs. It's not breaking up as quickly. So it's a more neutral amp.
Gotcha.
So most of the time when guys go, I need a high headroom amp for a pedal platform, they're also saying, I want a neutral amp. I don't want something that sounds instantly like a Vox, instantly sounds like a Marshall. I want it to be in a very middle ground. So if I put this pedal into it, it'll let the pedal control more of the sound.
Possibly. That might be right.
Basically, it's when you think headroom, think of the pure amplification of the sound that you're putting in without colorizing it.
Yeah, without
Before it breaks up.
distortion.
Yeah, so like if I, on my Supro, once I am at about like 5, I'm no longer getting louder. I'm
Right.
now the tone is really starting to color, and I'm getting overdrive.
But to Tony's point, though, talking about colorization, your Supro is not what I would describe as an ideal pedal platform, because the Supro has a certain voice that is a Supro sound. So it's not as neutral.
Assuming
it's got more
I
color.
want basically just to hear the pedal sound.
Exactly. So that's typically like a very ineffective, very, very popular pedal platform amp is the Hot Rod Series Fender. Because if you set those knobs generally halfway up, have it on the clean channel, it's pretty plain
I just about had
Jane.
to go into surgery because of that. Because remember, I told that's why I ended up getting the Supro. I'm like, I can't turn this thing up beyond 2 without it like breaking the windows. This is ridiculous. I can't even use it.
Lots of headroom, and like I said, it's very neutral sounding. It doesn't have a whole lot of character to it. It's just there. But people love those, and a lot of guys will build their pedal board rig around that because they can go do a fly gig, they can do a walking gig here, there, and there.
Is another one that's kind of on those.
Yes and no. It's high headroom. But high watt's got a certain character to
does
it.
have a
but the
sound.
headroom.
It's got that British tone.
But again, and back to Tony's point is that when most guys are asking for a pedal platform, a quote clean
They're looking
pedal
for
platform,
a clean sound.
they're also looking for a neutral
non-character sound.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
What was that giant PV amp that a lot of steel players use? It had a 15-inch speaker.
Nashville.
Yeah. I mean, that
There
thing,
you go.
That is like...
It's just electricity.
It's super, super clean. You
And
cannot
flat.
get it.
And I've never done this, but I imagine if you would put 100 hertz, 1K, 10K, the output signal would be exactly the same amplitude.
That's literally
on all those
like going
frequencies.
right from the wall just to the speaker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like Tony said, they were just loud and hello, I'm here. You know?
Yeah. All right. This one is from Danny Noonan. IEC cable versus performance.
What?
IEC cable versus performance.
Okay.
I lost my power supply cord at a gig and bought a replacement on Amazon. I feel like my amp performance has changed and not for the better. Is that possible? How much does the power cord affect an amp's performance? such as one that is removable / replacement, not hardwired.
Not hardwired. Right.
What should I replace it with?
Have you ever A/B like different IEC power cables?
Never.
Okay, neither have I. So unfortunately, I can't say I haven't done the scientific method. I can't say I've done this and it doesn't make any difference. In theory, I can't imagine it making a difference unless you are using a 32 gauge, tiny
Gold-plated.
something that is only capable of delivering 1 amp of current to an amp that requires 3 amp. I can't imagine it making a noticeable difference. I really can't, especially considering that if you're plugging it into your home and you're not using a regulator or whatever, the voltage is going up or down 5 or 10 volts every day. Your wife turns on a blender in the next room, it drops 2 volts. So I doubt if he's really actually noticing difference unless the IC cable he's using now is so poor.
Yeah.
Well, I have heard that, you want to get the biggest the biggest gauge cable you can get for your amp, as opposed to a real.
I mean, I've always used the ones that come with the amp, or
but in this case, he lost his.
I've always saved, like anytime I've trashed an old Mac or something like that. That power cable works great on amplifiers for some reason.
There's a company, I can't remember the name of them now, but they sell them on Amazon. They're very affordable. Oh man, it's right off the top of my head.
And some of them are very expensive.
Some of them are very expensive.
And I think that's where I've never done an A/B test, so I can't say for sure.
I think you need to do an A/B test.
Oh boy, you have sent me down that rabbit hole. And there's actually a company, Mercury Magnetics. They sell a red power cable that supposedly improves your tone.
Does it improve your playing though?
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Danny Noonan, for doing that. Anyways,
never mind.
Mal Sanders. This is Mal Sanders. Tone. What is the deal with master volumes like my Mesa Lone Star versus amps with a single volume like a Tweed Deluxe? Can having a master volume with a channel volume degrade your tone?
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
I have an opinion on that.
Go ahead, Tony.
Master tones.
Go ahead, Tony. What?
9 times out of 10, if I have an amp with a master...
9 times?
9 times out of 10, if I have an amp with a master volume, I turn the master volume all the way up and then control the overall volume with the channel volume.
Okay.
And Todd, do you have a master volume on your amp?
No. Okay. I have 2 channels.
I've always felt that...
And one's basically combined.
Mm-hmm, yeah. So you blend them, yeah.
Yeah. I've always felt that adding a master volume kind of chokes the signal. And I mean, it's important for some people. They want to play at a lower volume, but you can never, in my opinion, again, I'll say that you can never get the same sound as a wide open power section. That's just what I've always done. And, I mean, unless you're in a situation where you really have to limit your overall volume.
So, but aren't the master volumes at that stage allowing you to get quote unquote amp breakup without going to full volume and making the house fall down?
I'm going to let Tony go a little further. Then I'm going to cut his legs out from underneath him.
Okay.
So, from what little I know about
I love all these qualifiers.
I was going to make a joke about Tony going out on a limb, but that would be a very short joke. Hey!
Thanks, Todd. Thanks for noticing.
So mean.
The master volumes on most amplifiers are placed after the preamp stage before it goes into the final output stage. Am I right there?
Sorta.
I'm sort of right.
We'll come back around.
He's gonna slam me. I know.
Oh,
I'm not gonna slam you, and this is why I'm letting you go first because I think this is important.
I don't like Rob
because you don't have the technical knowledge, so you're speaking from how you use an amp.
How I use an amp.
So I think this is very important. Yeah.
So I mean, a lot of people will take, if there's a master volume, they'll crank the channel volume, and then turn the master all the way down. And it's not a very good signal, in my opinion. I mean, in some cases, I might take, even if I do engage a master volume, I might put it at 50% and then make the adjustments. But to me, amps always sound better with the master volume wide open and in just controlling the overall volume with the channel volume.
And what type of music are you usually playing?
I mean, rock and roll. I mean,
like name some songs or like a band.
Things like some Beatles songs.
Stones.
I mean,
okay.
I'm primarily cut my teeth on 60s pop songs.
Okay. And that's why I asked that question. Is that's a qualifier there? Okay. If you were playing Metallica, you could get that sound without a master volume. You would be bleeding from your ears in buckets.
Well, kind of like AC/DC.
Well, Metallica is 10 times the gain of AC/DC.
Yeah.
And that's where master volumes came in.
He plays pretty clean, actually.
Yeah, it really does. Yeah, there's not that much gain on the AC. Yeah, I mean that's the breakover point from, and that makes sense because they were using those amps. That was the point where master volume started to become a thing.
Right.
Because it was like, okay, we can't get any more preamp gain until we insert an extra gain stage, at which point we have to add master volume. So here's my take on it is it all depends on what music you're playing. Mm-hmm. And to your point, if I was playing, let's say my set list was Rolling Stones to Kinks to CCR, I could use a master volume amp, but there's no way I could turn the master volume down any more than 50% or 60%. I would have to use it just to take the edge off because that sound is not very dirty. It's dirty, like on a scale of 1 to 10, it's a 3. If Slipknot's a 10, so it's dirty. It's breaking up, but it's not gain. It's not high gain, and it's the fact that you're pushing the entire amp and the speakers, like we talked about before, right? Mm-hmm. So the master volume could be inserted somewhere, but you want to use it very sparingly, if just to take the edge off of it, right? Whereas if you turn it down too much, then you've broken. Just like I think you said something like you're choking it off or something.
Yeah,
you're absolutely right. That's exactly what you're doing with the master volume inserted somewhere. You're choking it off at some point and saying no more coming through here.
Look at the big brain on Tony.
But it goes back to what kind of sound you want. If you want that Metallica saturated or even the Van Halen kind of stuff, there's an attenuator somewhere because the whole point is that you're crushing all the preamp stages. You're pushing 2 gain pedals into 5 gain stages, whatever, crushing it to the point, it's just feeding back uncontrollably. And if you didn't have master volume, you'd be deaf.
Or you're browning out the amp.
Yeah, which I mean, and again, he did that to pull the volume down. That was an attenuator he was trying to get. And he's right. And basically what he was doing, he wasn't turning it down a whole lot. He was probably taking 9 dB off the top of it. Just taking that edge off of it, because he would have them cranked on stage. So, mm-hmm. Yeah, he wasn't using them in his bedroom, or he was using it in a club that only seats 50 people,
Right.
So, and there's different types of master volumes too. We talked about on episode number
175.
One of them.
Okay.
You're on here a couple times.
You guys are supposed to know this stuff. So anybody that wants to really know.
230 episodes. Give me a break.
So anyone that wants to really know, okay, this master volume does this, the attenuator does this, go look up that episode.
Yes, they were great. It was Amps 101, and there was a couple of those that we did with him. All right, this is from Ty Webb. Platform, I have always placed with half stacks. I've always played with half stacks, but it seems like clubs now have a lower stage volume limit, which makes my Marshall sound like crap. Is it worth it to even have them anymore unless you are playing huge stages?
Well, this goes to what we were just talking about. I mean, that's, I see that. I see so many.
They have to turn them to the back of the wall. That's what I see.
Yeah, right. You mentioned that, I think, last episode we did.
Or face down on the stage.
or in the parking lot. But no, I mean, I've seen over the past decade so many more small wattage, small amps. Guys that we used to be using a twin or a
I'm gigging with the
Vibrolux.
25 watt amp.
Yeah. These guys are now bringing in Princeton's, or sometimes they'll bring in a Princeton and go, yeah, the Deluxe was too loud.
Yeah.
So, but it's all about what you're, I mean, that's a preference thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this one is from Sam Jett, and this is about components. What components determine the voicing of an amplifier?
What was the question? What
All of them.
What components
Okay.
determine the quote unquote or quote voicing unquote of an amplifier?
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I heard that right. Yeah, all of them. But I'll say this: it's the fact that like some guys, some builders will push. I'm using Sozo caps, and I'm using this type of resistor. I'm using carpet comp resistor, Sozo caps. This. They're throwing around all these buzzwords. I can build an amp without those $20 capacitors each or $15 each capacitors. I'll use a $2 capacitor, and it will get you 98% of the distance.
Okay, so but let me, I think, maybe be more obvious about that. What components, maybe this is where he's going, make a Fender sound like a Fender, a Marshall sound like a Marshall,
None.
and a Vox sound like a Vox?
It's the circuit. That's
the
my
circuit.
point of this.
Okay.
It's the circuit. The circuit. So somebody will say, yeah, this guy's using Sozo versus this cap. What will make more difference is changing one a plate resistor from a 100K resistor to 120. That'll
Okay.
make more difference than those caps. Actually changing the circuit itself.
Okay.
I think putting in good transformers makes a big difference too.
If I was to pick anything, transformers would be the number one thing.
They are more than meets the eye.
It's in particular output transformer.
Output transformer,
Yeah. Todd, that was bad.
All right. Well,
Good ad,
that
Tony.
concludes our awesome Ask Rob Anything. Wait, we do have one more question. This is a caller. Caller, identify yourself.
Hello, Todd.
Yes.
Todd, this is Clem Fandango. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Clem Fandango. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, but can you hear me?
I can.
Very good. I've got one.
Yes. What's your question, Clem Fandango?
I've got one. Rob, cabinet-wise, how much does the type of wood matter to sound? Would you prefer a thicker plywood or blue spruce?
Is this a serious question?
to us, it is.
Yeah, well, I'm going to answer it seriously then. It makes a huge difference, and it's all about what kind of sound you're looking at for.
Okay.
Meaning, if you want that tight Marshall sound, then you want a void-free birch. If you want that vintage tweed sound, you want a pretty poorly made pine cabinet because it moves and vibrates, and so it's all.
So blue spruce would be closest to pine.
Blue
there you go.
spruce.
There you go.
All right. Well, that was a whole lot of fun. I hope you all learned a lot. I know that I did. And Tony learned some because he already knows a lot. Rob, seriously, thank you for answering all those.
Yeah,
Those are
that was great.
really
Rob.
great questions. And
Sorry, too much info as always.
The amp world is a bit of black magic to most of us.
I was kind of wondering about
Understand.
biasing. Can we go over that again?
Yeah, we didn't really touch on that.
But first, we have to get the construction of a tube.
Yes. Okay, so I have in my grubby little mitts, I have one final thing, and this is you can do it.
Would you rather?
Oh boy! Good thing you play guitar.
I haven't been practicing.
All right,
or
here we go.
anything. You
This
just
is from
pointed at me.
Michio Murakishi.
Murakishi.
Would you rather? So you're walking down the street and you leave your bag of pedals on the bus because that goes together. So you have to make a quick stop at your local Guitar Center.
Okay.
Now, a Guitar Center is important because there you can choose any 12 Boss pedals, including the Wazacraft pedals, or something like a multi-effects processor, kind of like a Line 6 HX effects, or something like along those lines.
So
Tony.
So I would say I would probably I'm just gonna dive in. I'm saying the HX, either the Stomp or the effects, whatever, is it takes a little bit of time to really learn how to use it, but right out of the gate you can dial in some things. I think that out of everything that I've seen out there, it's a little more intuitive than anything else. I mean, having a dozen of those pedals would be really cool, especially if they're some of the Japanese Boss stuff. I mean, there's some really cool things, and those probably are even more intuitive because I've used.
Well,
pedals,
they're all manual.
Yeah, you just reach down and
So there is a bit of a learning curve, and I guess depending on how complex I had to make the sounds for that evening, it would if I had time to program in the things in the HX, I would say that would be the way to go because that solves a lot of problems.
Yeah. All right, Rob.
I hate these questions.
They're so good. They are delicious.
Okay, assuming that this is with the assumption or caveat that I have time to plug in 12 pedals, and because that's a whole different thing, I would go with 12 different pedals because what Tony just alluded to, that you've got knobs, they're familiar. Okay, this is my phaser, this is my blues driver. There's where it is.
Yeah, I mean that's something I could definitely see, and especially if you're already under the gun and you've left your stuff behind and you're worried about that.
Yeah, because to pull up a preset in an HX where it's got drive, delay, and something else, it's not going to happen as quick as if you had 3 pedals in front of you. Obviously, way more flexible though. So if you needed 50 different presets, well,
right,
yeah. So anyway, separate pedals for me.
I'm going to go with the HX effects.
Is that because you already have one?
No, I don't. I have the HX Stomp.
Oh, yep.
The HX effects has it's more like a proper
Full
pedal
helix.
effects board. It's not as compact, and it is more focused on allowing you to tap dance like if you had a normal pedal board. And
they should call it the Mr. Bojangles.
Not really big Boss fan. I say that really quietly.
Yeah.
Did you say that you're not a big Boss fan?
I'm trying to.
And to that point, I've got one Boss pedal on my pedal board, so I'm not a huge.
I love the idea of it. I've just never really warmed up to them.
But there's the thing: most of their pedals don't sound terrible. Most of them also don't sound amazing. They're workhorses.
Yeah, they're middle of the road.
Yeah.
And if you grew up when I grew up, I mean, you had
it was the best.
MXR, Electro-Harmonics, and Boss.
And at that point, Boss was like the Cadillac.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, that's and everybody to their own.
So
there are no wrong
island.
answers there for anyone. You are.
What do you think Jared would have said?
Pedals.
You think?
Yeah, he probably
He
would
would've said
have. He
pedals.
probably would have taken the Boss pedals.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
I think he's got quite a few of them.
All right. So you have company on your end.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll just assume. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Michio Murakishi, for sending that in. Tony,
Yes, Todd.
get us on the road. I'm hungry now.
You hungry?
I'm sure everybody else who's listening is too,
hungry.
or is very late for
They're
work.
asleep.
At this point of the show, we like to talk about tube biasing and the overall construction of tubes.
I'm glad you asked.
Yes.
No, at this point of the show, we like to talk about our executive producers. It's a very important part because these are a special group of people that we love to thank. They help us out. They make the show possible. Now, you're wondering maybe, how do I become an executive producer? Well, let me tell you, it's quite easy. You go over to patreon.com/the guitar knobs and check out a couple of different options you have to become a patron, a sponsor of this podcast. Both levels come with a great bevy of prize thank you gifts and prizes and all the good stuff. Things like barefoot buttons and stickers and picks and flashlights and
All kinds of stuff.
the list
Lions
goes on.
and tigers and bears.
Oh my! As an executive producer, you get all that great stuff, but there's one thing more. Jared, what is that?
Get to have your name read on the thing.
That's-
Your name
I couldn't even tell that wasn't Jared.
read on the thing. That's what I'm going to do right now. So special thanks to these executive producers. Big breath. Tom Barazin, Darren Gregory, Doug Christ, Michael Van Zant, Ken Sayers, Brian Robison, Michael Senchuk, Stefan Lamb, Anthony Lathrop, John England, Brad Partridge, John Esterle, Justin Jones, James White, Matt Hart, Bill Gola Guitars, Richard Kendall, Tig Harmon, John Jackson, Jason Roush, Gary Cooper, Mark Garton, Elad Mizrahi, Mikey D, Trevor Gunberg, Rick Calhoun, Anthony Gemolero, and John Helverson.
All right. That's quite a list there, Tony.
Todd, are you interrupting me?
I didn't mean to. I'm sorry.
Oh, my goodness. In addition to these executive producers, we have a special group of executive producers, namely our grand poobahs. These people reside in the penthouse suite with individual hot tub spas filled with orange Kool-Aid. The sweet Kool-Aid.
The sweet Kool-Aid.
Ew.
Sticky and sweet.
Oh, I did not need that visual.
So special thanks to these grand poobahs. Jonathan Jerusik, Corey Nigro, David Kaminga, Science of Sound, Cody Foster, Sean S., Tommy Manasco, Adam Johnson, Steve Keys, Tim Novak, Tyler Rhines, James Pennington, LSJ Music Company, John Williams, Johnny Morales, Mel Sanders, Bob Crouch, Sam Jett, Michio Murakishi, Martin Cliff, and Hex Meadows.
Yes. All right. That is fantastic. Thank you all so much for helping us with this show. Keeping the lights on, as it were, and making sure that all the stuff gets all over the place and allowing us to do really fun things for all of you. Tony, let's ask Rob.
Okay. Rob, where can we find you, Rob?
Mad Cow Amplification on Instagram.
That's it?
I think I've got YouTube and Facebook too.
What if somebody wants to send you an email?
What is it? info@madcowamplification.com.
And
Perfect.
Can I give them your personal cell number?
No.
Tony, how about you?
Go over to pickguardian.com. Check out some of the things that I have to offer on there. Some you can order online. Mostly what I do is custom work. So shoot me an email. Let me know what you need, what you're thinking. If you want to change out pickups, let's talk. And I will take very good care of you.
Pick up rings.
Pick up rings in some cases.
Headstock plates.
Careful with that.
You mean truss rod covers?
No! He does not mean that.
All right. What? You can send me a DM on Instagram at Guitar Knobs. You can also email me, Todd at theguitarknobs.com. If you want to get a hold of Jared too, just use the same things. And anything sent to me directed at anyone else on the crew, I will make sure that it gets to them as well. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for supporting our show and our guitar community and all those beautiful, amazing builders out there. Everybody have a great guitar week and subscribe! That was weird.
That's my favorite one yet.
Oh, you wanted to do that one?
Yeah. It's a good one. Okay, hang on. I'll
Look
do
at
this.
Todd laughing and smiling. Here we go.
I gotta clap. There's no way that's making it in there.
I've got a word for you. Jared not being here threw you off. And
where's Jared? Jared.
Are we ready?
As ready as we'll ever be.
Okay, Todd.
Let's go.
Here we go.
All right. I love it.
Howdy, partner. Did you just have like a...
I did. I just had a brain
aneurysm
fart.
or something?
I can't remember what I say. Oh, man.
Started from the top.
Okay.
Wow.
Well, that's it for these knobs. Please visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/theguitarknobs. Visit our website at theguitarknobs.com for all of our past episodes, 4 on the Floor blog, and other good stuff. You can connect with us on social too at our Facebook page and share your gear and stories on our Facebook group. Also, be sure to check out our Instagram at Guitar Knobs. Catch you next time.